Towards the end of the previous videos, you are invited to think about the features of a human civilization based on what we have examined about the achievements of the four great ancient civilizations. The four great ancient civilizations which we examined were the Egyptian civilizations, Mesopotamian civilization, Indian civilization, and the Chinese civilizations. From the achievements of these great civilizations, we might be able to arrive at some features that define a human civilization. You may have your own list of features, and in this video, we are going to look at some features that bring about the emergence of a human civilization. Now, when we want to identify the features of a human civilization, we should firstly look at the meaning of the word civilization. Civilization is actually related to the Latin term civitas, which means cities. The origin of the word civilization tells us the close connection between cities and human civilizations. Now, when we recall what we have learned from the previous video, we would certainly agree that cities are important to a human civilization. Let's take a look at the previous presentation. Now, we used to mention about cities when we talk about different human civilizations. Say, for example, in ancient Egypt, we can find some cities in ancient Egypt. And when we talk about the Mesopotamian civilization, we used to mention about the region of Sumer. In this region, we can also identify some independent city-states. They are cities, but at the same time, they are also countries, just like Singapore today. And we also talk about the achievements of the Babylonian Empire because the one king of the Babylonian Empire, Hammurabi, came up with the first written law in human history, the Code of Hammurabi. Now, the written law of this empire was very important, but this empire, the Babylonian Empire, was originally a city in Mesopotamia. And we can see here, it was only a city here in Mesopotamia. When we talk about the Indian civilization, we also mention about the two city-states in the Indus Valley. So, based on what we have examined about the development of these human civilizations, we can be able to arrive at a conclusion. The formation of cities must be an important ingredient of a human civilization. Now, when cities can grow, we can certainly bring up other conclusions. One conclusion that we can arrive at is that our human ancestors must have achieved something in other sectors, or else the formation of cities is not possible. So, what prior achievements did our human ancestor need to make in order to bring about the formation of cities? The very important achievements that they must attain should be the production of extra food in farming. Now, every one of us is living in a modern city, Hong Kong, and all of us know that agriculture is not an important economic activity in Hong Kong, but still, Hong Kong citizens could be able to get enough food for our survival. Where do we get our food? Actually, much of the food that we consume every day in Hong Kong is imported from the other countries. So, cities need to depend on other places for their food. Cities can grow only when there is extra food. If the agricultural sector, if the farming sector cannot produce extra food, they would not be able to support the emergence of cities. So farming must be better developed in order to provide cities with extra food, or else the formation of cities would not be possible. So how can farming be better developed? Farming could only be better developed with the invention of better farming tools. If we want to have better farming tools, we should at least use metals to produce the farming tools. So here in this picture, we can see the metal blades produced that are used in the sickles. And without the use of metals, the quality of the farming tools could not be improved. Without an improvement in the farming tools, we would not be able to produce to grow sufficient crops to feed the human population in the cities. Now, when the farming sector could produce more than enough food for the people to eat, that means the farming sector do not need to have or do not need to employ a lot of people. That means in the whole country, some people could be freed from the farming work and they could take up other positions. So that is a very important development. Without the development in farming, there could not be extra food. Without extra food, other economic sectors could not develop. When there were not other economic sectors, when there were no other economic sectors, it means that there would not be other jobs for the people to take up. It was only after the farming sector could produce some extra food, or we may say some surplus food, some people can then be freed from the farming work and take up jobs in other economic sectors, and so other economic sectors could develop, and then cities could emerge. And when there were other economic sectors, when there were jobs other than farmings, then social classes, social structure gradually developed, and this would also be another feature of a human civilization. So by far, we have already talked about a number of features of a human civilization. Firstly, we talk about the formation of cities. Secondly, we talk about the development of farming. Thirdly, we talk about the use of metals, particularly the use of metals in producing good farming tools. And then the fourth characteristic or the fourth feature that we can identify for a human civilization is the emergence of a social structure, or the emergence of social classes. This was the fourth feature of a human civilization. Now, other than these developments, or other than these features, we can also identify other features of a human civilization. For a human civilization to develop, we should also identify one more important development, which is the development of religion. Now, even though the ancient people were able to produce some better farming tools, we should not ignore the fact that, farming is dependent on nature. Farming is still dependent on nature. Now, and the ancient people would not have sufficient technology to master the natural forces. Actually, even today, we are not able to exercise total control or complete control over the Mother Earth. We may have better understanding than our ancestors about the Earth that we are living in. However, we still do not have sufficient technology to control every natural force. And so that was also the problem with our ancestors. since that our ancestors could not control the natural forces, therefore they believe that in order to control the natural force, they need to depend on some supernatural being. They thought that there must be a higher being, there must be a higher deity that would be more powerful than the natural forces that are so important for farming. And this supernatural force must be able to control this supernatural being must be able to control the natural forces. And so religion developed as a result, and our ancestors used to believe that by performing different religious practices, we would be able to get the supernatural being to help us control the natural forces, so that we would be able to grow enough food to feed ourselves and to feed the people living in the cities. So as a result, religion could develop. So that's why when we look at different human civilizations, we should be able to identify that religion also developed in all these civilizations. Now, let's take a look at our previous presentation. When we talk about the Egyptian civilizations, we also talk about their gods. Now, certainly we do not go deep into the Egyptian religion, but we all know that the Egyptians worship many gods. And other than the Egyptians, we also mention about the religious practice of the Chinese. And we used to point out that, well, the Chinese put a lot of emphasis upon the worship of their ancestors, and they believe that by worshipping their ancestors, they would be able to enjoy good fortune and avoid disaster. So, from this examination, we can arrive at the conclusion that, well, religion is important to different human civilizations. Now, the development of or the emergence of religion was the fifth feature of a human civilization. Now, certainly, we might not be able to control all the natural forces, and even with the help of religious practices, we might not be able to bring the natural forces to our needs and allow us to enjoy a lot of advantages. So we still need to work hard, and we still need to work together with other people in order to gain the most benefits from our natural environment. Now, therefore, one important institution should come into being, and this institution was the government. Now, as you all know, when we need to farm, we need to have water. However, in order to water the field, one kind of construction work is necessary, and this is the development of an irrigation network. In order to construct a good irrigation network or a good irrigation system, the government would be needed in order to coordinate different people, different social classes, to work together in order to complete the construction work of an irrigation system. So, the emergence or the formation of government would be another feature or another characteristic of a human civilization. So, this can be counted as a sixth characteristic or sixth feature of a human civilization. Now, for a government to govern efficiently, there must be some ways for the government to give out orders quickly. When a government needs to rule over a large area, well, they have to develop a system of communication that would enable their orders to reach the far corners of their country. And so the system of writing would develop, which is also the seventh feature of a human civilization. Now, so we have gone through a list of 7 features of the human civilizations, and I think that I do not need to go back to the previous presentation to highlight the emergence of the system of writing. Now, maybe we go through the 7 features of a human civilization again. First of all, the emergence of cities. Secondly, the development of farming. Thirdly, the use of metals. Fourthly, the emergence of social classes or a social structure. Development of religion. The formation of government. And finally, the adoption of writing. The development of writing. Now, so here are the features of a human civilization. Now, having examined the features of a human civilization, we are now going back to the discussion of the classical civilization. We are going back to talk about the ancient Greek and Roman civilizations. And before we go deeper into the examination of the developments in these 2 civilizations, maybe it is good for me to invite you to look at the geographical conditions in Greece and Italy. Now, may I give you some time to look at these 2 pictures? Can you find anything special from these 2 pictures? If you cannot identify any special thing about the geographical features or geographical conditions of Greece and Italy, I think that it might be good for me to invite you to look at more maps. Now, here are the maps of Egypt and Mesopotamia. Here are the maps for India and China. Can you notice any differences between the maps of Greece and Italy and the maps of these 4 ancient civilizations? Now, an examination of these 6 maps would certainly reveal to you that Greece and Italy are hilly. Yes, there might still be mountains in Egypt, Mesopotamia, India, or China. However, at the same time, you can also be able to identify a lot of flat land in China, the green regions here, in India, here, in Mesopotamia, and in Egypt. The flat land can be found along the Nile River Valley. Now, however, in the case of Greece and Italy, we found that these 2 places are more hilly than the other regions. So, can you think about the possible impact of the hilly conditions in Greece and Italy on the development of these 2 civilizations? Let's think about it. Other than this geographical feature, we can also identify that the 4 ancient civilizations started in the river valleys. However, when we look at the maps of Greece and Italy, which also appear in your textbook, we find that the authors of our textbook do not show any rivers in Greece. Well, they show a river in Italy, River Tiber. However, why don't the author show the rivers in Greece? Now, I do not want to give you the answer in the video. I would like you to try to find out the length of the rivers in Greece, Italy, and the length of the rivers in Egypt, Mesopotamia, India, and China. I think that by looking at the length of these important rivers, namely the Yellow River, the Indus River, River Tigris and Euphrates, as well as the Nile River, you should be able to arrive at a conclusion why the authors do not show us clearly on the maps of Greece, especially the rivers that are flowing through different parts of different parts of Greece. Now, so I invite you to think about this question, and you would be required to complete relevant worksheet. Thank you very much, and this is the end of this video. Goodbye.